Games that have a weird or unorthodox design or idea behind them truly are my favorite. Unfortunately, but also thankfully, they are a bit rare. Once a full moon or so, we do get lucky, and whenever one is announced, I do keep an eye on it. Take Showa American Story for example. Very strange in whatever it is truly going to be, but its visuals are... they are fascinating to say the least. Or my favorite example, Stranding. Never get enough of that one. It's a shame that Steam does have multiple popularity/trending tabs to sort games in, but not one for strange, peculiar games that I am talking about here and look for. If it had such a tab, I probably would have found Promise Mascot Agency a lot sooner. One glance at the game was enough for me to slam down my credit card on the table. I mean, Yakuza, strange creature collecting, deck and somewhat city builder, business management, open world exploration and collectathon. How are they going to balance all those aspects, let alone write a story around that? I truly had no clue, but intrigued I definitely was. And you probably as well, because otherwise you would not have clicked on this video. So without further ado, let's see how Promise Mascot Agency is going to make sense in all of this and what it has to offer. After a job gone wrong, Michizane, also known as the janitor, leaves his Yakuza family with a huge amount of debt. To repay this, he agrees to move to Kazumachi, a rural town on a small island, to set up a business. But not just any business, a mascot agency. Which sounds simple enough, though they are not regular mascots to promote products or hype up a party. Instead, they are living, breathing creatures that come in all strange sizes and shapes. And while you think that is the strangest part of it all, a lot of mystery lurks around Kazumachi itself. The town seems to be completely run down and abandoned. Strange spirits are spotted outside of the town on the island, and there's even a curse that coincidentally targets Yakuza members. In other words, time is ticking for the janitor, Michizane, to set up the agency, send out mascots, making a lot of money and getting the town back on its feet so he can leave this town behind and go back to his Yakuza life. The story premise and tone in Promise Mascot Agency is, in my opinion, just great. Because it's cool yet self-aware silly about it, which makes the story very endearing and just adorable in its presentation. The constant clash between being cool, badass and a little bit dark, with a lot of self-awareness on it being very silly, over the top, funny jokes and cute moments, strike a fine balance of humor that I really dig. I mean, the base premise says all what you need to expect of the cool yet silliness of the story. But if that didn't do the job, then the scene that I consider absolute gold and the embodiment of the entire tone of this game probably will. It's one of the early scenes in the game where you, a member of the Yakuza, whose nickname is the janitor, always wielding a broom which you beat up people with, shares a moment in an onsen with one of the mascots, who oddly enough is a large block of tofu that constantly cries in fear of being a failure. I know, it sounds kinda stupid, and it maybe is. It's at least very silly, yet it's presented in such a confident way that it's also kinda cool and therefore funny. And this kind of stuff is constant throughout the entire game, yet it manages to never overdo it. Which is a very impressive thing to do, as it's more common than not that games that set off on a path like this loses itself on it. That does not mean that the game constrains itself in this aspect. I think it's because of the constant clash of such huge opposites that the mix doesn't get stale throughout the game, as the switch is so huge. On top of that, I think it's great that they made the two main characters, that being Michizane and his partner mascot Pinky, the direct opposites of one another. They constantly play off one another with the before mentioned aspects that clash with each other. Michizane is the stoic, cool Yakuza guy, while Pinky is the chaotic, all fun and good girl. Both in aspects over the top, but in balance together. The pair does unfortunately outshine most other characters in the game though, leaving them a bit behind at times in terms of importance and role in the story. Which, depending on how much you enjoy the duo of Michi and Pinky, can be a potential problem. Like I said, I enjoy their chemistry, and the other characters that added in the conversation and story to that was just a nice addition. But the chemistry is mostly based on humor, which is very selective. So if such chemistry doesn't work well for you, then unfortunately there are not a lot of characters to fall back upon. What is a good thing to fall back upon and could compensate the selective humor quite a bit is the gameplay itself. The strange mix of it was already mentioned in the opening. In Promise Mascot Agency, we got aspects of creature collecting, deck and semi-city builder, business management, open world exploration and collectathon. Again, this is a whole list of aspects for a game, and it does make for a good clickbaity intro. In reality, however, as you should expect, these aspects are in the game but in a more watered down sense, and is just like the story thrown into a large mix where they all complement each other in one way or another. Again, creating a balance and a large solid piece of gameplay together than one or two aspects carrying the entire gameplay. Most of the time you are driving around in your little K-truck over the island. Of course, like all open world games, there's a lot to do, going from A to B for the story, doing side quests, exploration or collectibles. Besides the main story marker, the most important thing to find in the world are other mascots and to manage them. While you drive around on the island, you run the mascot agency in the meantime. This is done by simply sending them on tasks and wait till they come back. An interesting side aspect to the whole management is when you recruit a new mascot, you have to negotiate a contract with them and put in certain deals, which sometimes need to be taken care of in between jobs. You also need to keep an eye on each mascot's stamina and happiness, but most of the time when they are away on their job, things will take care of themselves. Again, it's not something to overthink or overly complicated, that this is a weaker version of these aspects. However, sometimes things on the job can go wrong. A distress call comes in and it's up to you to help your mascot out of a rough spot. This is where the deck building and card game comes in. Whenever a mascot needs help, you play a game of cards where it is your goal to deal damage and defeat the problem causer for your mascot in a limited amount of turns. There are 4 element types and each card has a certain amount of damage it does based on those elements. Some cards can increase the amount of turns you play or allow you to draw more cards. Once the HP bar of the opponent is depleted, the game ends and your mission was a success. Of course, if you fail to do this in the time limit or with the amount of turns you have, you lose. Again, it's very simple and it's just a fun little mini game, but I got way too much invested into that than I probably should. Not only is the setting itself rather funny, I mean all your mascots' jobs apparently are streamed and there are hundreds to thousands of people watching it go wrong, but the simplicity of these almost encounter-style card games is such a nice palate cleanser from everything else. You could ask the question if this aspect should have been more, and sometimes I wish it was, but that wish comes from the hunger for more, not because of what is there is not satisfying. Each distress call is a fun little situation caused by one of your mascots messing something up in a spectacular fashion. And laying down a large string of cards in succession never stops being not satisfying. Plus, and more importantly, there is a big ripple effect of rewards doing these as well, so even when you get less invested into it later down the line, it still felt very much worth my time doing them. Completing a rescue mission means the job instantly ends and that you can send said mascot again for another mission. Especially in early game where cash flow is a little bit slow, this is a huge plus. You also get a decent amount of bonus money on top of the normal wage when you complete a rescue mission. And when the difficulty does start to ramp up a bit, overcoming it is done by doing other things properly and invest time and money in them as well. Like these cards are actually characters you meet on your journey in the world. You can upgrade these cards by buying duplicates, completing side quests, or finding them in the world. So doing any of those 3 activities is also worth your time, especially when you get close to fully upgrading cards. Because then even the toughest job becomes very easy, which means even more money, jobs, and happy mascots, and so on. Now, easier jobs or larger cash rewards are all great, but there should be a greater purpose to it all, right? And well, here it has a very good one as well. As you progress, not per se the story, but your entire agency and business empire, it starts to have a noticeable effect on the island. making the open world not completely, but at least semi-alive. As you work on your agency and help the people, the more lively the island becomes. More shops will be built, other buildings will be restored, people will be visibly around the streets, and almost literally color itself will return to this once dead town. Of course, the more lively the town is, the more opportunity for profit arrives, but it also makes exploring the island and traveling more enjoyable as well. Normally, as I progress through open world games, I get fatigued of all the stuff that you can and sometimes must do on the map and the long distances you must traverse for the story, while nothing or barely anything changes in the world. At the beginning, of course, everything is very exciting because it's all new and all. Same goes for Promise Mascot Agency. Exploring the island at the start is great, but it's very clever and a little bit constraining with the way and the amount of things you can do along the road. The story mostly requires you to travel from A to B to talk with people, and fast travel is not available for the large chunk of the game. So the story plays a key role in nudging you towards certain locations. Along the road you find billboards to destroy, shrines to clean up, and nail designs for Pinky to collect. Again, there are not a lot of them out there, but a decent chunk on the path. One pass basically is enough to clean out everything along the road. But is it wise to do that, as you will travel the same road multiple times? Yes, because the game will introduce new collectibles and such as you progress, making backtracking less boring, and there's always something new to do. Now, it might sound like the game forces you to backtrack, but this also forces you to take in the change that the island is going through, which is quite clever. Now, near the end of the game, this effect wears off and fatigue starts to settle in, which is the perfect moment to introduce fast travel, which the game does. At that point, I wanted to just complete the story because I was done with everything else, and with fast travel, it was no problem to achieve exactly that. Though, to my surprise, because of this game's atmosphere and the way the world changes, I did do more driving than was required of me. It's oddly very fun to drive this funky little K-truck as well. Plus, some of the music that you hear along the road is just so good and relaxing, really pulling you into this game's setting altogether. However, I will say that for me the game overstayed its welcome a little bit near the end. For all the good that it does at the end of the story, I was done faster with it than it was concluded. It dragged on a bit too much near the end. This was also caused by the fact that I ended up at a point where I was more focused on the gameplay and management side of things than the story itself. So while the conclusion and ending was fine and satisfying, it can suffer from a bad pacing created by the player. And while its simplicity is its strongest aspect, it does become its greatest weakness once you exhaust all possibilities. Now, that does sound like a very terrible way to conclude your game with, but when I consider that I played 14 hours of this game and enjoyed almost all of that, I would call it more of a mild inconvenience. In rare cases, I got to a point that I felt bored or annoyed and wanted to turn the game off. But then there was the atmosphere and the character of the game that truly saved the day and pulled me easily through it. Though, I would understand that for some people this might be a little bit too short and simplistic type of game to pay 25 euros for. Personally, I thought it was worth all of it. While I might be a little bit biased towards a game like this for its strange ideas, large mix of gameplay aspects and overall presentation, it still is one of those weird games. It's a fun, unique experience. It's little though, but again, it's quality that speaks here, and it speaks loud here. There is unfortunately no demo to test out if the game is for you, but it goes on sale regularly. So if the length-price ratio is a problem, then at least wishlist this game for the future. If that ain't a problem and everything else I said sounds good to you, then I highly recommend you checking this game out.